Halloween 2016. It was me and my 3 closest friends that night. For the sake of this story, let's just call them J, K, and N. We were out trick-or-treating downtown, where the streets always turned into a chaotic flood of people on Halloween. The reason? Simple. The houses were crammed close together, which meant maximum candy for minimum effort. Every kid knew that was the sweet spot. By the time the clock hit 10 p.m., the energy in the air started to fizzle out. Costumed crowds thinned, porch lights clicked off one by one, and laughter grew more distant. Come 10:30, we were basically the last kids still out roaming the sidewalks, squeezing what little fun we could from the night. At that hour, barely 1 in every 10 houses even bothered to open their doors. The magic had run dry. We finally decided to call it no more trick-or-treating. But it was a Saturday night, and we weren't ready to head home just yet. So instead, we agreed to wander a bit, mess around, see what kind of dumb fun we could still scrape together in the shadows of the nearly deserted streets. That's when we saw it. Emerging slowly, almost unnaturally slow, from the heavy black fog in the distance, a lone figure appeared. A clown. Not the cheesy kid party kind either. This one looked like it had clawed its way straight out of a nightmare. The makeup was twisted, grotesque. Its mouth was a deep, exaggerated slit of a grin, stretching far past where lips should have ended, lined with dark, crusted red that looked far too real. Swollen, oozing boils clung to its cheeks and forehead, glistening faintly in the dim light. Every step it took echoed with eerie calm, like it had no rush, as if it wanted us to notice. And we did. The 4 of us froze for a second, caught off guard. Jay let out a short laugh, more from nerves than humor. K and N yelped, startled but trying to play it off. We all laughed in that panicked, buzzing way you do when you don't know whether to run or just pretend it's nothing. Ultimately, we turned and walked away, trying not to seem fazed. But even as we moved, none of us said a word for a moment. We just kept looking back, that clown figure slowly fading again into the fog, like it had never even been there in the first place. After we left the street behind, we wandered over to a nearby park just to mess around, blow off steam, and keep the night going. It wasn't anything serious, just typical teenage antics with silly string and shaving cream. We didn't expect to be the first ones to do that either. Turns out, we weren't. The place already looked like a war zone. Strands of silly string hung off the monkey bars like fake spider webs. The bathroom building near the edge of the playground was smeared with globs of shaving cream. The white foam streaked across the brick wall to spell out crude, angry words. It was chaotic, but kind of fun in that rebellious Halloween night sort of way. We all climbed around the playground, laughing and joking. But then Jay suddenly froze, his eyes locked on something in the distance. He lifted his arm and pointed toward the dark edge of the park, toward the horizon where the fog seemed to thicken. That's when we saw them. 2 clowns. They were just walking, slow, deliberate, headed straight for us. One of them was unmistakably the same clown we'd seen earlier, with that jagged grin and face like a mangled doll from a haunted attic. But the second one, I swear, I didn't think it was possible, but he looked even worse. His costume was more chaotic, his posture more twisted, almost hunched like something not entirely human. And then we noticed something else. The first clown, the one we'd seen back on the street, was holding something now. A long metallic object that glinted faintly in the low park light. It looked like a spear, or maybe a metal rod sharpened at the tip. Whatever it wasn't a toy. The laughter stopped. Everything about the moment shifted. The weird humor of the situation, the haha creepy clown vibe, it vanished instantly. Cold dread settled over all four of us like a thick blanket. They kept walking, still slow, still silent, but now they were much closer. And then, without a sound, they started to sprint. We didn't plan it, we didn't speak, we just ran, each of us in a different direction, hearts pounding, adrenaline crashing through our veins like a tidal wave. One of them came after me. I didn't look back. I just ran, tearing through the park and out onto the street, barely processing the turns I made. I didn't know the neighborhood well, not really, but I remembered the way back to Elle's house, and that was all that mattered. Halfway there, I realized the footsteps behind me had stopped. The sound of heavy, pounding feet was gone. Somehow, I'd lost the clown. Still gasping, I pulled out my phone and called Elle. "I'm in your backyard," I said, trying to catch my breath. My chest felt like it was about to explode. He picked up after a few rings, his voice ragged and winded. "I just lost one of them too," he said. "I'm coming now." I told him I'd try calling Jay, and he said he'd get in touch with Kay. I dialed Jay. One ring. He answered immediately. Unlike the rest of us, Jay wasn't being chased. His voice was calm, way less frantic than Elle's. I told him to meet us at Elle's house. And in that moment, even though we were scattered and shaken, we had one goal: regroup. Whatever had just happened, we weren't going to deal with it alone. About 10 minutes later, all four of us had made it safely to Elle's backyard, adrenaline still thrumming beneath our skin. We gathered in a loose circle near the back steps, trying to catch our breath and process everything that had just happened. There was a strange mix of emotions, fear, confusion, and now, oddly, laughter. Now that we were safe and together again, the whole encounter somehow felt surreal, like something out of a prank show or a bad dream. We started cracking jokes between bites of candy from our trick-or-treat haul, nervously laughing it off, like if we laughed hard enough, we could erase the tension still lingering in the air. After a little while, Kay said his goodbyes and headed home. That left just me, Jay, and Elle in the living room. The lights were off, just the soft flicker of the TV casting shadows across the walls. We were playing a dumb party game on the Xbox One, trying to shift the vibe, distract ourselves, pretend the night had gone back to normal. And for a moment, it almost felt like it had. Then Jay froze. He was sitting by the window. He suddenly ducked low and hissed, "Turn off the TV." We looked at him, confused. Why? "There's a clown outside," he whispered. My stomach tightened. I didn't believe him at first. I figured he was messing around, trying to spook us, still riding the high of what had happened earlier. So I got up and headed toward the window. He practically lunged at me. "Don't!" But I'd already pulled the curtain aside, and there he was, a clown, standing just outside of Elle's house, still, silent, and staring directly at me through the window. The second our eyes locked, a cold bolt of fear shot through me. It wasn't just the makeup or the eerie stillness, it was the intent behind the stare, like he knew exactly who I was, like he'd followed us. I yanked the curtain closed and turned to Elle, my voice low and shaky. He's not lying. His parents weren't home that night, so going to his dad wasn't an option. We were on our own. Without another word, we shut off the TV, grabbed the controllers, and bolted upstairs to Elle's bedroom. From there, we peeked cautiously through the second-story window, trying to get another glimpse. Nothing. The yard below was empty. No figures in the dark, no movement. It was as if the clown had vanished into thin air. We never saw either of them again. Not that night, not ever. But the next morning, Elle sent a group text to all three of us. He'd gone out back and found something on the patio table. Something that hadn't been there the night before. A red rubber clown nose, perfectly placed in the center of the table, left there with clear intent, not by accident, not by coincidence. It was a message. One last twisted joke from whoever was behind the mask. And yeah, mission accomplished. It scared the hell out of us. Thankfully, the whole clown epidemic faded not long after, maybe a month later. People stopped talking about it, the costumes disappeared, the streets felt safe again. But to us, it never became just another Halloween memory. It became one of those stories you never really stop thinking about. It was Halloween, but not the fun kind. It was a school night, and I didn't have any plans. No parties, no costume, nothing. So when my mom and dad decided to take my two twin little brothers out trick-or-treating, they basically forced me to stay home and man the front door. Just hand out candy if anyone shows up, my mom said, already zipping up one of the twins' little dinosaur hoodies. We'll be back before it gets too late. I didn't argue. Honestly, I figured it wouldn't be a big deal anyway. We live in a cold cul-de-sac, tucked away at the far end of a dead-end street. Barely anyone comes through here, even on Halloween. Most years we'd be lucky to get 3 or 4 kids ringing the doorbell all night, so I expected it to be pretty quiet. Still, every time that doorbell did ring, I felt a little jolt in my chest. The silence in the house made the sound sharper, more sudden. I was camped out in the living room, slouched on the couch with a blanket over my legs. The only light came from the TV and the dull glow of the hallway. The big orange candy bucket sat next to me on a side table, filled to the brim. It was always Butterfingers. For some reason, that was the only candy my mom ever got on Halloween. I never questioned it, just one of those weird little family traditions, I guess. The doorbell rang again. I sighed, grabbed the bucket, and shuffled over to the door. Probably another tired-looking kid on his last stop for the night. I opened it. Standing on the porch was someone dressed in a scream mask and black robe, the classic costume. He was holding out a pillowcase, already sagging a little at the bottom, but not by much. It didn't look like he'd gotten much candy tonight, and he was alone, which always felt kinda sad, especially on Halloween. It was almost the end of the night, and I figured no one else was coming by anyway, so I scooped up a generous handful of Butterfingers and dropped them into his bag. He didn't say a word. Not even a thanks. Just turned around and walked back down the front steps, the empty fabric of his costume fluttering a little behind him. I stood there for a second, watching him disappear into the shadows at the end of the cul-de-sac. Something about it left me feeling, I don't know, weird. I guess it was the silence, or maybe just the fact that he didn't speak at all. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, just a little off. Still, the moment I sat back down on the couch, I shrugged it off. Didn't think twice. The movie I'd been watching eventually came to an end. Bored and still alone in the house, I started flipping through the channels, aimlessly searching for something else to kill time. Each press of the remote made the screen flash briefly, scenes and sounds bleeding into one another, gunshots, laughter tracks, static. And then, in one of those brief moments of silence between channel switches, I heard it. A dull thud, followed by a soft bump. It came from downstairs, somewhere near the back door. My thumb froze on the remote. I didn't move, straining to hear. To get a better sense of what it might have been, I slowly reached for the volume and turned the TV all the way down until the room was thick with silence. Then I stood up and crept over to the stairway that overlooked the lower level, the den. What I saw made my stomach twist. The back door was wide open. The cold night air crept in, brushing up the stairwell and chilling the base of my spine. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A nauseous heat rose in my chest. I'd forgotten to lock the back door earlier. That much I knew. But what I didn't know, what made my skin crawl, was whether that noise I heard just now was the sound of the door opening or closing. And worse, was someone in the house now? The only thing that came naturally was panic. I leaned over the railing and called down the stairway. "Mom? Dad?" No answer. "Guys?" I called my twin brothers' names. Still nothing. The silence below was suffocating, deep, dark, and still. The den was already creepy in normal circumstances, but in that moment it felt like it was hiding something, like the shadows themselves were waiting. I wanted to go down there, I really did, but I couldn't move. I was frozen. The worst part? There's no door separating the main floor from the den, just the open stairway. No lock, no barrier. Suddenly, sitting in the living room didn't feel safe anymore. Not with that gaping, dark void just steps away. I left the TV on, but muted, letting its glow spill across the room. I didn't want to sit in complete darkness. Somehow, the screen made me feel just a little less alone. But the fear stayed. It settled into my skin like a cold sweat. I kept thinking, why hadn't I already called my parents? Eventually, and I don't know why it took me so long, the thought finally hit me like a slap. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. She answered quickly. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out shaken. "Can you guys come home soon? Like now?" She told me they'd be back within half an hour. I hesitated, then told her what I'd heard, that I thought someone might be downstairs, that I was scared. She tried to reassure me. "There's nothing down there, sweetie," she said softly. "It's probably just your imagination." But her words didn't comfort me, because no matter how many times I told myself the same thing, that door had been wide open, and something had made a sound. I had barely hung up the phone when I heard it. Creak. a subtle but unmistakable sound, the wooden foundation creaking beneath one of the carpeted steps leading down to the den. I froze right there on the couch, absolutely paralyzed. Not a single muscle would move. I couldn't twitch a finger. I couldn't even blink. I just sat there, heart pounding so violently it felt like my ribs might crack from the inside. Then, another crack. Closer. Someone was on the stairs. As quietly as I could, I shifted forward, easing myself into a half-crouch, trying not to make a sound. My legs felt like jelly, barely holding me up. I turned toward the front door, inching my way in that direction, barefoot and trembling. But just as I passed the back edge of the couch, the very same couch that blocked the den stairway from view, I saw it. A face, or rather, a mask, peeking from the dark shadows of the stairway just a few steps up from the bottom was the unmistakable Scream mask. That long, distorted, ghost-white face with hollow eyes and a drooping mouth frozen in silent terror. Except this time, it was real. And it was watching me, but not head-on. The way he was angled, the way he tilted his head just barely out from behind the stair rail. It was clear he was trying not to be seen, trying to observe without being caught. That somehow made it even worse. The mask hovered there, almost hovering in the dark, lit faintly by the spill of light from the muted TV. And then he saw me. We locked eyes for half a second. Then, without a word or sound, he slipped backward, disappearing again into the shadows of the den. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, bolted upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, my hands shaking as I slammed the door to my room and locked it. Then I grabbed my phone and called my mom again. My voice cracked as I told her what I'd just seen. That someone, that same masked person from earlier, was now inside the house. They cut their trip short. My parents came home immediately. And only when I heard the front door open, only when I saw their faces again, did I feel like I could breathe. Like the nightmare might actually be over. My dad and I searched the den together. Every corner, every closet, every room. No one. Whoever had been there was gone. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no smashed glass. Just the cold truth. He had come through the unlocked back door. Just walked in, like the house was his. The moral of the story? Lock your doors, because apparently some people don't wait for an invitation. My older brother was throwing a Halloween party that night. He was a sophomore in college, and with our parents out of town for the weekend, he saw it as the perfect opportunity to take full advantage of an empty house. He wasn't exactly subtle about how he felt either. He made it abundantly clear that he didn't want me anywhere near the place while his friends were over. I was just an 8th grader after all, a kid, an embarrassment, I guess. Luckily for both of us, I already had plans. My 2 best friends and I had been looking forward to trick-or-treating for weeks. We all agreed this would probably be our last year doing it. We were getting older, and we knew it. But that only made us more determined to go all out and make it count. We started early, right after school let out, while the sun was still up and the sidewalks were buzzing with other kids in costume. This was prime time. Most people were still home, lights were on, and candy bowls were overflowing. We hit house after house, our bags filling fast. By the time it got dark, we'd already filled up 2 whole bags each. We made pit stops at our houses in between to drop them off, of course. No way we were carrying that much weight all night. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. We were on a mission, 3 full bags before the night was over. After scarfing down dinner and hanging out for a bit at my friend's place, we set back out, this time with empty bags and flashlights in hand. You'll see why that was important soon. It was probably around 9 p.m. when we hit the streets again. By that point, the energy of the evening had died down a bit. Most of the kids were home, and the houses that once had glowing pumpkins and open doors were now quiet and dark. Getting candy was a lot slower now. Most buckets had been picked clean, and people had stopped answering their doors altogether. Porch lights were off, decorations had been unplugged. But we didn't care. Not yet. We still had that 3rd bag to fill, and the night wasn't over. An hour flew by without us even noticing. Sure, we weren't scoring much candy anymore. The neighborhood had gone quiet, porch lights dim, buckets empty. But we were still having fun, laughing, joking, running from house to house just for the hell of it. By the time it hit around 10:30 or maybe even 11, we finally stopped. At that point, it just felt obnoxious to keep knocking. Nobody was answering anyway. Most of the houses were dark, and it had that hollow Halloween feeling when you know the night's over, even if you don't want it to be. But we weren't ready to go home. It was a Tuesday night, yeah, a school night and a work night, which explained why everyone else had already gone in. But we had a plan. We were skipping school tomorrow. We'd already agreed on it earlier in the week. We were all in the same homeroom, and we knew for a fact that nothing important was happening the next day. Just filler classes and half-hearted lectures. To us, the night was still young. That's when someone brought up the Ghoul House. Locals had been calling it that for years. It was a house with a reputation, the kind of place you only talked about when the sun was down. According to the stories, a couple lived there a long time ago. They had a child. No one could remember the details, but something happened. Something awful. The kid died in the house under unclear circumstances. Not long after that, the parents divorced. The wife moved out. And then, just a few weeks later, the husband shot himself right there at the kitchen table. After that, the place was fenced off, left to rot, abandoned. No one bought it, no one tore it down, no one touched it. To this day, nobody knows why. Naturally, we had to go. We took off running through the chilly night air, our flashlights bouncing ahead of us, casting narrow beams onto cracked sidewalks and empty lawns. The streets were silent now, the magic of Halloween replaced with stillness. When we reached the Ghoul House, the reality of it finally set in. It was way scarier in the dark than we'd expected. The house was taller than the others around it, looming in the shadows like it was watching us. Its windows were like hollow eyes, some boarded up, others just pitch black. A rusted black fence wrapped around the front yard, barely held together in places. Overgrown bushes clung to the metal like they were trying to choke it. And the gate? Wide enough to squeeze through, or easy to hop over if you didn't care about getting scratched up. Which, of course, we didn't. There was something about doing something you knew you shouldn't be doing, something forbidden, that made it all the more thrilling. Like the air itself got heavier with excitement. We climbed the fence, and we stepped onto the dead grass of the front yard like we were crossing into another world. We decided to circle around to the back of the house, just to be safe. The last thing we wanted was some nosy neighbor spotting us and calling the cops. We kept our flashlights low, ducking through overgrown grass and branches that clawed at our jackets like brittle fingers. The back windows were boarded up, not sloppily, but tightly, like someone had taken real care to seal the place from the inside. The back door was blocked too. A heavy table had been wedged up against it at an awkward angle. It didn't look like it had been tossed there randomly. Someone clearly tried very hard to keep people out. Maybe a neighbor, or maybe someone else. Still, we weren't turning back. It took all three of us working together to quietly lift the table off the door and set it gently down on the patchy grass. It was heavier than it looked. The wood groaned a little, but we managed to do it without making too much noise. There was no doorknob on the back door, just a smooth hole where it used to be. I gave it a slow push, and to my surprise, the door creaked inward with barely any resistance. We were inside, and the feeling was instant, that strange, unshakable mix of discomfort and excitement. It was cold in there, and the air smelled stale, like mildew and dust and something older. Something that hadn't moved in a long time. We clicked on our flashlights. The beams cut through the blackness, giving us a soft circle of light wherever we pointed. We were standing in what must have been the back living area, maybe a den. The floorboards beneath us moaned with every step, dry and warped with age. Dust floated lazily in the air, dancing in the flashlight beams like ash. Everything about the place felt untouched, not vandalized, not trashed, just abandoned, like no one had ever dared to break in before. The room itself was empty, aside from a sunken old armchair and a few broken floor tiles. Nothing worth sticking around for. So we moved forward, stepping into the kitchen. It was even worse. An old, yellowing refrigerator sat crooked in the corner, looking like it had been pulled straight from a different decade. One of my friends reached for the handle, against all logic, and pulled it open. Immediately, the room was hit with a wave of foul, chemical rot. It wasn't just the smell of decay. It was this awful plasticky, sour stench, like spoiled milk mixed with melted plastic and something that had died years ago. We all gagged, turning our heads away. Inside the fridge were just a few empty cartons. Old milk, orange juice, nothing that should have caused a smell like that. We didn't wait to find out more. We got out of the kitchen fast. Next up was the main living room, and this one was different. There wasn't anything specific in it that made your skin crawl, not at first glance. But the moment we stepped in, we all felt it. That uneasy pressure, like the air in the room had weight to it. Something about the space made you feel like you were being watched. Not just watched, studied. There was no furniture left, aside from a single crooked lamp in the corner, bent at an unnatural angle. The wallpaper was peeling, and the ceiling had a dark water stain that stretched across it like a bruise. But it wasn't the room itself. It was the feeling. Every time you turned around, you swore there would be someone standing in one of the corners, just outside the beam of your light. But there never was. One of my friends slowly raised his flashlight and aimed it at the ceiling. "Look at that," he whispered. We all followed the beam of light. There, directly above us, was a massive hole in the ceiling, the wood rotted out, torn open. It gave a clear view right into a room upstairs, like the house had peeled itself apart. The edges of the hole were jagged, as if someone had punched through the ceiling from above. Before we could really process it, we heard it. Thump. Then another. Thump. Thump. The sounds came from directly above us. We immediately clicked off our flashlights, almost in unison, and froze, standing in absolute darkness. I felt this awful, sharp pain bloom in my chest, like my heart was suddenly way too big for the space it had. The kind of feeling you get when your body knows something is really wrong. We stood there, barely breathing. Whispers followed. "Those were definitely footsteps," one of us breathed, the kind of whisper that barely carries past your lips. We all knew it. We didn't need to say it out loud. There was someone or something up there. One of my friends leaned in and whispered, "We should go up there, see what it is." I stared at him, eyes wide. "No, absolutely not." My other friend agreed instantly. We started tiptoeing back toward the rear door, our footsteps soft against the warped wood. Every creak made me wince. But the other guy, the one who suggested going upstairs, he didn't move. He just stood there for a moment, then turned and made his way toward the stairs. Not cautiously, not stealthily. He didn't even try to be quiet. We watched him disappear up the staircase, the boards creaking loudly beneath him as he ascended, light bouncing with every step. And suddenly, it was just the two of us again, down in the living room. We didn't know what to do. We didn't want to stay. We didn't want to leave without him either. So we stayed frozen in place, locked in that horrible in-between. Then we heard them, footsteps, now overhead, walking across the upstairs hallway, deliberate and slow. The sound echoed through the hollow house, floorboards flexing under his weight. Then they stopped, right above us. By this point, my eyes had mostly adjusted to the dark. Even without our flashlights, I could make out the figure of my friend standing in the room above us, peering down through that jagged hole in the ceiling. His outline was still, just standing there, looking right at us. I raised my head slightly and whispered his name, not too loud, just enough that he should have heard it. I whispered again, a little louder this time. No reaction. He didn't move, didn't even flinch. Something about the way he was just frozen like that sent a ripple of dread through me. I didn't want to call out louder. Something in my gut screamed not to. And then, suddenly, we heard footsteps coming from the stairway in the living room. My friend and I spun around, our hands flying to the buttons on our flashlights. We flicked them on and aimed them up the staircase. And there he was, our friend, the real one, walking down the stairs, looking confused, his flashlight bouncing softly with each step. It hit us in an instant. The one standing above us, looking down through that hole, wasn't him. We both stood frozen for half a second, eyes wide, breath caught in our throats. Neither of us could bring ourselves to turn our flashlights back up to that hole. We didn't want to know. We didn't want to see who or what had been watching us from above. I just yelled, "Run!" And that was it. We all bolted for the back door, hearts slamming in our chests. We didn't look back. We didn't stop. We didn't even speak until we were 3 blocks away, breathless, standing in the safety of one of our friends' houses. When we finally caught our breath, the one who had gone upstairs told us what happened. He said as soon as he stepped into the upper hallway, he was hit with a foul stench, something thick and sour, like a rotting carcass. It made his eyes water. And then he heard breathing, deep and slow, coming from one of the rooms nearby. He didn't stick around to see who it belonged to. He turned around and came back downstairs. And whoever was up there, they stayed behind. To this day, we still don't know who that was in the house, but honestly, it feels impossible that it was just some random person. The place was practically sealed shut. Every door, every window, boarded and blocked. Whoever was there had been inside for a while. Maybe they'd never left. All I know is we never went back, and we never will.